and you've done all the work to improve yourself, to upgrade your mindset, carry yourself with more dignity, have unconditional self-love, increase your confidence, but there's something missing. And you know in your gut that something hasn't clicked, because there are still a few subtle behaviors, a few remnants of the behaviors that you tried to get rid of, a few remnants of your internalized misogyny and patriarchy that still live within you, that are still being immortalized through your body. And those are the hardest pieces to get rid of, because they're so deeply entrenched in every single one of us that most of us don't even have the consciousness to know that they exist. And once we discover that they exist, there's still conscious work and unlearning we need to do to actively get rid of those. And it's like scraping something off of like a dirty glass. It takes forever. So after listening to this episode, you'll know exactly what those gaps are, exactly what those remnants are, and you'll be better able to fill those gaps and unlearn those last pieces of your internalized patriarchy so you can go on standing on business. And with that, DJ, give a bad bitch her theme song so that we can get this show on the road. You cannot expect somebody to love you more than you love yourself. You cannot expect somebody to treat you with more respect than you have for yourself. When you carry yourself like a loser, people are going to treat you like a loser. When you carry yourself as somebody with a lot of dignity and somebody who doesn't stand for crap, people are going to be more cautious and they're not going to try to push your boundaries. So people are taking your lead, whether you want to believe it or not. And this puts us in so much control because you pick how you want to be perceived and you work backwards from that goal. Okay? Victimella looks at this and thinks, oh my God, people. Sorry, I glitched. But Victimella looks at this and thinks, oh my God, the world is so unfair, because she fails to realize how much control is within her hands. So that's where I come in. All right. So hello, everybody. My name is Nikki. I am your host. I am the baddest bitch in the building, not to be confused with you, who's also the baddest bitch in the building. And I am here to help you unlearn your internalized patriarchy. And that's why this podcast was one of the fastest growing and most shared podcasts on Spotify in 2025. Don't you ever fucking forget that. Oh my God. So sorry. That was Nika Farrell. That wasn't Nikki Modabar. So today we're going to talk about 5 subtle habits that make people lose respect for you without you even realizing it. All right, so let's get into it. Habit number 1, saying sorry instead of thank you. Oh my goodness, women are conditioned to apologize for absolutely everything. Probably 90% of the things you apologize for are not even things you've done wrong. They're simply you feeling guilty about taking up space or asking for something that's rightfully yours or asserting yourself or doing something that men do guilt-free all the time, and you'll never hear an apology coming out of their mouths. And here's the thing about the word sorry. Sorry implies regret. When you say, I'm sorry, you're basically saying, I wish this thing didn't happen. I regret that this thing happened. So when you apologize to someone for doing you a favor, going out of their way to help you, holding the door open for you, whatever it is, when you apologize to someone for doing something that you deserved to receive, something good, you're basically telling them, I'm not deserving of this. And more than anything, you're telling yourself, I'm not deserving of this. Think about it. Let's say your partner went out of their way to pick something up for you because you're having a busy day. You could tell them, I'm so sorry you had to drive to the other side of town to pick up my dry cleaning. Or you could say, thank you for going through all that trouble to pick up my dry cleaning. I really appreciate it. Which one do you think sounds better? When you tell someone, I'm sorry that you had to do this, I'm sorry you went through all this trouble to help me, you're literally telling them, I was not deserving of your time and effort. So subconsciously, it signals to that person that not only did you not deserve what they did for you, but that they should probably not do it again. And like I said, you're saying that to yourself as well, because these things subconsciously get stored into your mind and get stored into your self concept. And slowly over time, with more and more apologies, you've built a self concept based on the fact that you don't deserve good things. You don't deserve people to help you, to do things for you, to give you things, to buy you gifts, to hold the door open for you, to give you compliments, whatever it is. And I know that the sorry that we say comes from a place of discomfort because a lot of us are uncomfortable with receiving. This behavior actually is from patriarchy hack number 12 in my book, called Receive More Than You Give. That's one of the hacks in my book that underwent a lot of construction because, as you know, my book, How to Hack the Patriarchy, is an updated and revised version of my first 20 girly laws of power from the show. That hack underwent so much work. And this is actually one of the items, one of the suggestions I talk about in that chapter. So you're getting some free knowledge here. And that made it into that chapter about receiving, because so many of us are uncomfortable in that receiving role, because so many of us are people pleasers and we think our worth is derived from what we do for others. So we think we have to be the givers. And the way patriarchy is set up is that we're in the receiver role when it means we're in a position to be controlled and subservient. So, all that to say, I don't want to regurgitate that whole chapter here. Sorry implies regret. So, replace the word sorry with thank you. But I don't even apologize most of the time when I'm wrong. Even at work, back when I worked corporate, back when I worked a 9 to 5, even if I screwed something up, which was not very often, but if I did screw something up, you would almost never catch me apologizing because then that would automatically incriminate me. So, not to say to dodge accountability unless you need to, but we have to be careful with our words because you literally cast spells with your words. I'm not even kidding. When you say something out loud, you've made it real. You've put those words out into the world. Your words give a physical form to a thought that you've thunk. Words make your thoughts real. And I'll give you an example. When I had just started my podcast in early 2024 and I was still working my full-time job as a corporate consultant, I said out loud, to whoever would listen, that this job that I'm working at is the last job where I don't work for myself. This is the last job where I work for somebody else. And at the time, my podcast had like 2 listeners, my mom and one of my friends. And I didn't even fully believe that, I was going to quit my 9 to 5 and then pursue the podcast full time. I thought I'd quit my 9 to 5 and then work at another 9 to 5 because I was actively looking for other full-time jobs. And I'm not even kidding. None of those interviews worked out. I even got to the final round interview for one of the jobs where I was the top candidate and I didn't get it. And I had said out loud so many times to myself and to other people that this is the last job where I don't work for myself, that it finally happened. And about a year later, I quit my job and I pursued this full time and I became a full-time podcaster and author and philosopher. So you can literally cast spells with your words. I'm not even kidding. And when you say sorry, when you mean to say thank you, you're casting a spell on yourself and on the other person by letting both of you know that you were not deserving. So through your words, through your apology, you're bringing out those subconscious thoughts that you're not worthy and you're giving them a physical form and putting that out in the world. And that's loser behavior. And we're not losers. So cut it out. So replace the word sorry with thanks. Thank you for going out of your way to help me. Thank you for holding the door open for me. Don't apologize when someone holds the door open for you or moves out of the way so you can pass by. You say thank you. Thank you for helping me out. Thank you for this amazing gift. Thank you for that compliment. Thank you that I kicked you in the nuts. Thank you that I punched you in the face, okay? Thank you only. No more apologies, babes. Number 2, not ending your sentences. When you trail off and you don't end your sentences, or you finish them off with, so yeah, but like, and other qualifiers like that, you're showing that you're not confident in what you're saying. And this is something I picked up on while I was interviewing people as guests on the podcast, and also whenever I appear as a guest on somebody else's podcast. Because all of this is done virtually now, you need to wait for the other person to finish speaking before jumping in. And it's really hard, especially as the host and the interviewer. It was really hard for me to do that when my guest would trail off or wouldn't end their sentences, because I didn't know if they were done speaking. I didn't know if they were thinking out loud. So it was tricky to have a good dynamic, a good rapport going, especially online. And it's the same thing with other contexts, at work, in a regular conversation, on a date, in a negotiation. Oh my gosh. It's the same thing. When you don't end your sentences or when you trail off, what you're signaling to everybody in that room is, I'm not confident in what I just said. I don't fully believe in what I just said. And you could have said the most iconic thing ever, but when you trail off your sentence, you've diminished what you said. And for any of you who work in male-dominated environments, in places where men dominate the conversations, jump in, interrupt, and love to hear the sound of their own voices, this is especially important. And I noticed this a lot with the women I worked with. As I mentioned, I worked in corporate sustainability consulting, and I sat in boardrooms with so many high-ranking people, with C-suite executives, CFOs, CEOs, vice presidents, all sorts of people, all sorts of really senior people, men and women. And something I noticed with every single one of them, especially the women, is that they do not trail off their sentences. They end their sentences and they do not let anyone interrupt them. If someone tries to jump in while they're talking, they don't even flinch. They just continue talking until they finish their point. And then when they're done, the other people can speak. The floor is open to the rest of the people. And it was fascinating observing this. And I feel like I could do a whole episode on things I learned just from working with high-ranking clients, because these are all women in male-dominated fields and women in male-dominated rooms, yet they still commanded the room and got respect from everybody around them because of the way that they carried themselves and did not let anybody speak over them, even if they tried. I've seen people literally not even let the CEO talk over them. Now, another thing related to this, it's not exactly trailing off your sentences or not ending them or waiting for somebody else to jump in, but it's also rambling because you don't know how to end your monologue or your sentence. And I'm super guilty of this, especially when I was working with people who were a lot more senior than me and I didn't feel entirely confident in what I was saying. Trust me, it showed. I would just kind of ramble in the hopes that something that I said would hit. You know what I mean? And it's hard, especially with people who are more like poker faced, more senior around you, because a lot of the time they're just frowning. Even if they agree with you, they're just frowning. And you look at people around the room for approval, nodding their heads, or, some kind of signal or body language that tells you that they agree with what you're saying. And when you don't get that, especially on online meetings, it's tough. So you keep rambling. And the more you ramble, the less competent you look. And this is something I learned from Robert Greene. A smart person knows how to control their tongue. Your tongue is a monster that needs to be tamed. And again, I've been in these situations where I didn't feel confident, so I became Yaparella in the hopes that I built some kind of credibility, but that actually works against you. So we all need to know when to shut the hell up, when to not over explain, and when to simply deliver one or two lines that are going to hit hard without worrying if people are going to approve of what we said or not. So it's better to say a couple of sentences and spark some discussion because maybe someone doesn't agree with it or somebody wants to ask a follow-up question and get more details from you. It's better to be succinct than to trail on and ramble. Because then that's also when somebody is going to jump in and interrupt you because you don't look like you know what you're talking about. You don't look like somebody who's commanding the room. And that's an invitation for people to jump in, especially the people who love to hear the sound of their own voices. Okay. So let's get comfortable with silence. Remember, patriarchy hack number 16, master the art of silence. We need to be comfortable with the silence because other people aren't. And people are very quick to assume silence means rejection. And so they jump in to fill in the gaps. And it's during those gaps that it's revealed who has the power, who has the control, and also who can't contain their tongue and who can't contain themselves, because that silence, that gap is when most people jump in to fill in the gaps by over-explaining and providing more information than they intended. So be strategic with your silence. Wrapping that up, make sure you end your sentences. Don't trail off with, but yeah, so yeah, or like, you know, do not do that. And know when to shut the fuck up. And remember also that most people don't know what the hell they're doing. So just pretend like you know what you're doing and people will follow your lead most of the time. And when in doubt, when you really don't know how to wrap up the thing you're saying, simply reiterate the question that was asked or reiterate your main point. And that's why I believe this approach is best suited for the client. And to wrap up, to answer the question that Anthony raised, this is why I believe this is the best approach. So use one last sentence to wrap everything up and reiterate. And if you noticed, I did that a couple moments ago. Hey baddies, quick intermission here. As you probably know, this show is entirely independently produced by me. I am the producer, the director, the writer, the researcher, the fact checker, the marketing executive, and the unpaid intern who gets everyone coffee. Not to be confused with the unpaid intern of the patriarchy. And this is independently produced because I am committed to giving you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And it's because of support from baddies like you who subscribe to my Patreon that I can continue delivering the truth and not censoring myself and tiptoeing around topics that are way too important to ignore, but are kind of scary if you are signed to a label or a production company. And of course, I make it worth your while. I'm not just saying, please go subscribe to my Patreon, ma'am, please. You'll get tons of perks. I have a private phone line that you'll get the number to, and you can call me pretty much anytime. I'll answer if I'm free. And you also get other perks like early and ad-free releases of my episodes, bonus episodes, voting power on my girly laws, handwritten letters from me, and a bunch of other perks. Check it out for yourself. The link is in the show notes. And again, thank you all so much for your continued support. All right, back to the show. Number 3, and this is somewhat related to the previous point, using qualifiers like I feel like, or I think, or I could be wrong, but, or simply just. When you use qualifiers, just like when you trail on your sentence and don't end it, you look unconfident and you're basically preceding your contribution by saying, take this with a grain of salt. Don't give me the respect I'm due because I don't even respect myself enough. Don't fully believe what I'm saying because I don't fully believe it. And like I said, people take your lead. So if you open your contribution by saying, hey, this might be a load of garbage, then guess what? People are going to go into that thinking it's going to be a load of garbage. You've set their expectations for them. And there's a technique, this is a psychological technique that, what's his name? Dr. Robert Cialdini discusses called persuasion. Persuasion is when you set people's expectations or how you frame something before actually delivering the something. And this is a really good strategy for job interviews and negotiations and things with power dynamics. Because, for example, this is one of the examples he gives. He says, when you go into a negotiation and you want to give your price, you say something along the lines of, okay, well, I can't charge $1 million for this service, or I can't charge $100,000 for this service, but our consulting services start at $5,000 all the way up to $15,000. And because you've mentioned big numbers like 1 million or 100,000, that 5 to 15 grand now looks like chips, cheap as chips, looks like pennies. So you've primed them to expect one thing, and then you deliver another. And that priming makes what you're delivering look more favorable. Another example he uses is when you go into a job interview. Before the interview starts and you finish your small talk, oh, how's your day? How was the subway ride here? La la la. You ask the interviewer, before we begin, I'm curious, what set my application apart from other people? What made my application stand out? And then the interviewer will answer with whatever was impressive from your resume, and that's already gotten them thinking about you in a positive light. So this technique of priming, which is actually something I learned during my undergrad in one of my public policy classes. It's a political tool used as well. Framing and priming. It's so powerful because it shapes the way people are going to look at whatever it is you're discussing. So you can use that in a positive light, or you can use that in a negative light. So when you say, oh, I could be wrong, but oh, this is, take this with a grain of salt, or this is just what I think. I think. Who cares what you think? You say it as if it's a fact. You better believe there's a man out there who's saying something that's simply his opinion, simply what he thinks. He's saying that with his whole chest out, puffing out his chest with his non-functional nipples, acting as if it is a fact. And guess what? People are going to accept it as such. So stop qualifying the things that you're saying, especially because most of the things that you're sharing are probably good things. Okay? Don't piss me off. All right? Again, another habit that I did a lot working in the corporate world, especially when you're in a room or a meeting with people who are intimidating to you. But just remember, those people can't even convert a Word doc to a PDF. So who's the real intimidator here? Next item, number 4, taking yourself too seriously. I know this one's a little bit different from what we just discussed, the first 3 habits. This is more of a behavior, a demeanor, a state of being. But people who take themselves too seriously look like they constantly have something to prove. And it's usually more to yourself. You're proving something more so to yourself than to other people. But people can pick up on that because you tend to overcompensate for things by being somebody who takes things too seriously. And what this signals to people is, I still have some unfinished business with myself, with my own self-concept. And your excessive seriousness is like a sign on a construction site that says, don't mind the mess. You're literally saying, hey, don't mind me. And guess what? They won't. And the irony is that when you take yourself too seriously, you end up looking like the joke. It's like you have short man syndrome, or the guy at the gym who has imaginary lat syndrome, who walks around with his imaginary lats puffed out as if his back is really wide. Like, you don't have a V-taper, sir. Just relax. It's the same thing with people who take themselves too seriously. And I know that it's not that easy because a lot of women are taught that we need to prove ourselves, whereas men get respect and reverence by default. People automatically assume they're smart and they're deserving. Women have to jump through hoops and prove themselves, and we got to prove ourselves over and over and over again that we're not dumb, we're not undeserving, we're not stupid. We are, in fact, rightfully there. We have a rightful seat at the table. And this constant battle, this constant struggle of proving ourselves and fighting for things that are easily handed to men puts a lot of us in survival mode. It puts us in a lack mindset, and it turns us into victimellas. And one of the outcomes of that is simply taking ourselves too seriously. But let me tell you, go listen to my episode about, it's called Life in a Patriarchy is a Game and It's Time to Win. I'll link it in the description box. Everything is made up. Everything is made up. I swear. Everything about reality is made up. And the way you see the world determines the world that you see. So that's why I am delusional to the point where people probably think I should be locked up in a mental asylum, because that delusion eventually turns into reality. Remember when I said out loud multiple times that this is going to be the last job where I don't work for myself, even when I didn't fully believe it? And guess what happened? It became the last job where I worked for somebody else. The universe is listening. I swear to God, the universe is listening. And you can bend reality to favor you, but you first need to understand it and develop the consciousness that this is even possible. I hope this makes sense. I'm happy to elaborate on this if it doesn't make sense. Listen to that episode, because if this is a little bit confusing for you, or if you want to hear more about this, that episode does a really, really good job of explaining it. So anyway, going back to this habit, taking yourself too seriously, something you need to understand, and my show is the perfect example of this, is a lot of the time you can get further with humor than with seriousness, especially to disarm people or to make them look stupid or to signal that, hey, you disrespected me, you pushed my boundaries. Using a little bit of lighthearted humor goes a lot longer than simply doing something with a straight face, because through humor, you bypass people's sense of defensiveness. Listen to patriarchy hack number 34. I'm losing track. 34. Never argue, make them look stupid instead. That will go into so much detail about this. And even number 33, trigger people's need to prove themselves to you, but more so number 34. And my podcast, like I was saying, is the perfect embodiment of this, because I talk about these heavy, serious topics in a lighthearted way. And I'm sure when you listen to this, you don't feel drained at the end of it. You don't feel helpless and hopeless and angry and resentful. You feel like you just had a conversation with a friend, you had some fun, you had some giggles, and now you learned a thing or two. And hopefully you can use that in your day or your week and make your life a little bit better. That's my goal. And that's how I get through to thousands of people, because I don't come in and talk about these heavy topics with a heavy approach. No one wants to hear that. We already have enough heaviness around us. The world is gray. The world is gray. We don't need more grayness. We need more color. Okay? So don't take yourself too seriously. Of course, there's exceptions to this and there are limits to this. You don't go into a board meeting looking like the court jester. But generally, holding yourself as a person who doesn't have something to prove, doesn't take things personally, and can laugh at herself and be lighthearted and be fun to be around, not like there's a storm cloud over your head, oh, you're going to be a breath of fresh air, and people are more likely to respect you. Because again, you're not saying to people, hey, I'm still under construction. I'm still figuring things out about myself. I have something to prove. You don't got to prove diddly. But I'll close this habit with something Machiavelli said. It's more important to be feared than to be loved. So you're not doing this to be liked by people and to be some kind of pick me. Please, oh my God, look how whimsy I am. Can you like me, please? No. We're not doing it like that, okay? Listen to what I just said. At the end of the day, being respected is more important than being liked. I feel like I have such a connection to Machiavelli. We even have the same initials, NM. Niccolo Machiavelli, Neek, Niccolo Machiavelli. That's our combined. If we were to be like a Hollywood couple, that would be our name, Niccolo. Anyway, number 5, and this is closely related to what we just talked about, being overly reactive, being overly bothered by things. When you react, especially when you react strongly, it shows that you are not in control. You may have been blindsided by something, and by reacting strongly, you've now shown how blindsided you were because you were not in control to begin with. And it's fine. We don't always have to be in control of everything. There are plenty of things outside of our control. There are things that we can't foresee, but appearances oftentimes matter more than reality. Another quote from our boy Niccolo. So it's very important, especially in the workplace or in the early stages of dating, to convey the appearance that's going to get you the end result that you want, because we're always working backwards from a goal. You need to understand that people are going to do things to you simply to get a rise out of you. People are going to push your buttons simply because they can and they want a reaction. Now it's time to draw in patriarchy hack number 33, trigger people's need to prove themselves to you. And this other episode that I did, which I'm completely going to butcher the name, the psychological power of being unbothered and why being unbothered is the ultimate revenge. I'll link everything down below. That being unbothered is so powerful. Baddies, I don't think you understand how powerful it is to be unbothered. And I didn't truly realize this until people started going out of their way to get a rise out of me, especially because your girl is popping now. And a lot of my former friends, people around me who acted like fake friends, who didn't support me, and then who saw that the brand was going strong and who saw that this little idea that I had a couple of years ago is now a full-blown thing, they felt some kind of way and they've gone out of their ways to do all sorts of things to try to put me down and get a rise out of me. You probably, if you've been listening to my episodes over the last couple of months, remember the story of my former friends / powerlifting teammates who booked an Airbnb without me when we were all supposed to go and stay together during the national championships that were happening on the other side of the country. So people will try to push your buttons and get a rise out of you if it is the last thing they do. And this is usually insecure people. It's people who think that they can feel better about themselves when they put other people down, because they're so deep in this zero-sum thinking that I can only win if someone else loses. They're so deep into this lack mindset that there's a limited amount of success and opportunity and wealth and love. There's a limited amount. So if Nikki has it, that means she's taken it away from me. Now I can't have it. I honestly feel like at least half, if not more, of people are like this. And it took working in an office for me to realize this. And I'm telling you this as somebody who had a woman at work try to push me to quit. When you react, you are giving that person the thing they wanted the most, because their glass is empty. Their glass literally is empty, and it's probably cracked too. Your glass is full. And every time you react, you're pouring into their glass through your energy and your time and your mental energy more than anything, because they know that they got under your skin. They know you're thinking about what they said to you in the shower later that day. And I'll be damned if I'm doing anything in the shower other than singing and having a good time. So fuck you. That was Nika Farrell, sorry. She's coming out a lot these days. So wrapping this up, understand that people will do things to get a reaction out of you, to humble you, to punish you. And a woman who has control over herself, who has nothing to prove, who is secure in her own self-concept, is not going to be bothered by that. It could hurt you a little bit. It could make you feel some kind of way. It could give you anxiety, but you don't show that outright because then you played right into their hands. And let me tell you, every time someone has done something to me, whether it was that woman at work or it was former friends who backstabbed me or treated me like crap, part of me was hurt. I'm like, this sucks. This was my friend of several years who did this and showed their true colors. I just lost a friend. This sucks. Or this person at work who is 12 rungs above me is now giving me living hell and is turning people in upper management against me. Now my life is more difficult. So the anger, sadness, frustration, those are normal emotions. You're going to feel those, even if you're emotionally detached, even if you're comfortable with yourself. But the key is to be the master over those emotions. Okay. The key is you control those emotions. You don't let them control you. And just like how people can't tame their tongue and control the monster that is their tongue, most people can't control the monster that is their emotions. So being unbothered, not showing a reaction, not being reactive to things is so important as a woman who's gaining respect, who wants to be more feared than loved, who wants to control the appearance that she's giving off, especially when you're in a male-dominated environment where men are trying to put you down, men are trying to humble you, men are trying to assert how alpha they are by putting you down because they're so deep into that zero-sum thinking. And let me tell you something, like heart to heart, let me tell you something. For any of you who are in male-dominated environments or in any environment where you feel like an outsider and people are going out of their way to remind you of what an outsider you are, I promise you, being in their head, being them is 1,000 times worse than being treated the way you're being treated. I'm not saying, oh, it could be worse, but just imagine the self-hatred, the emotional turmoil, the self-abuse, the self-destruction. Just imagine how crappy it must be to be them, how broken they must be to go out of their way, to put time and effort and energy, time out of their day they could have spent doing anything else to try to put you down. Imagine how miserable and pathetic they must be. Imagine how much they hate themselves. Because only people who hate themselves can hate other people. And that's the truth of it. No matter what they do to try to drag you down, to make you feel like an outsider, to make you feel crappy about yourself, what you feel will never compare to the disgusting, deep-seated amount of self-hatred and loathing that they have. And I know this might not help you. You might be like, okay, well, I got to go work with this idiot tomorrow. But I just hope that puts something in perspective for you so that you at least understand that it has absolutely nothing to do with you. None at all. And let me tell you, as somebody who gets hate every single day, you wouldn't be getting hatred if you weren't iconic. And that brings us to the end of this episode. I'm not even lying, I had 7 items on this list, but while I was reading my list, I'm like, you know what? One of these needs to be an episode. So those were 5 habits that are remnants of your internalized patriarchy, your internalized misogyny that you may not have known existed. You may not have had the consciousness to know they were there, but now you do. And I hope that you can take at least one of these today and implement them into your life, into your professional, romantic, interpersonal relationships, and stand on business. And remember, I am always rooting for you. Always, always, always. Don't know why my voice just cracked, but I'm always going to be in your corner. So let me know if there are any episodes you want me to do. Let me know if you use any of these suggestions and how they worked out for you. And I'll see you in my next episode or on social media if you follow me there. Anyway, until next time, don't forget that you are the baddest bitch in any building that you set foot in. In the meantime, stay bad. Love you. Bye. This is your captain speaking. I wanted to give a shout out to all the baddies who are supporting on Patreon: Kate, Danny, Lindsay, Emberly, Brittany, Hannah, Nadine, Amanda, Kitty, Red, Lisa, Melissa, Adriana, Gemma, Naomi, Nilufar, Nadia, Melinda, Sophia M, Sophia K, Jada, Amara, and Kat. Thank you all so much for your support, for being Star Alliance members, and thank you for flying Air Buddy.
Rest in peace to the chicks that's dying to be me.